I'm going to give you 3 words. You're not alone. There are so many individuals in the home beside you, across the street, in a different zip code that are dealing with the same thing behind closed doors. So if you speak up and you're that person to say, you know, I went to the VA, or I called and spoke with KOSTA, or I called Veterans First and they guided me to go this way. Well, guess what you just did? You were the first person to step up to be a voice for that other person that may have been more reluctant to do just that.
Hey y'all, it's KOSTA, and today I'm here with my guest, John Mozdzien, co-founder and executive director of Veterans First. Aging veterans and their families often face unique challenges, and it can be difficult trying to maintain a level of independence. That's why Veterans First works to provide veterans and their families the support they need for independent living at home. Welcome to the show, John, and thank you for your service. Will you tell us a bit about how Veterans First got started and why you wanted to undertake this endeavor?
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for having me here, KOSTA. Great to see you again as well. So Veterans First was started back in 2019. My business partner, who owns a home care agency already, I actually learned this business from a large national company. Unfortunately, at that time, KOSTA, my position was eliminated. I happen to be a Navy veteran myself. I was stationed on an aircraft carrier, launching the planes off the flight deck. I have bad knees now from that, but nonetheless, having this organization allows me to keep my naval service still current in my own mindset. And I would like to add to that, I feel as I have a duty and an obligation to serve those individuals that served before myself. So it's a strong passion within our culture here at Veterans First.
Do you think that Veterans First is a crucial and essential part of the long-term care industry as a whole? And also, I want to know how Veterans First sort of incorporates into long-term care.
Yeah, most definitely. I like how you positioned that, and I'll answer that in 2 parts. Number 1 is the benefit that we help veterans and their surviving spouse obtain, which is called aid in attendance, is, in my opinion, underutilized. It's not talked about a lot. So we have a staff here at Veterans First that helps the family furnish every single document that we need to prove that applicant's case. It's unfortunate. My mother, whom is 81 years old, she's a surviving spouse as well. And just knowing the documents that's needed to help these deserving individuals, they're daunting. So that allows, again, going back to our core here, to give back to these individuals every single day.
How are you guys identifying the struggles? Because you have to think about, like, the veteran population as they age. It's very similar to the aging population as a whole. You know, you've got dementia, you've got Alzheimer's, there's physical disabilities. And also, if you think about it, there are sometimes like limbs that are missing from combat. And also there is, you know, kind of the mental aspects of being in wars and serving, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I mean, how does a company like Veterans First go into a family's home or speak with families, identify the struggles that they're going through, aside from the documentation, and help veterans through the process of receiving at-home care?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So first and foremost, I believe it comes from connecting with the right individuals. And what I mean by that specific, social workers, discharge planners.
Yeah.
There's individuals out there that are here to support families. But you have to take that first step to ask for help. That's number 1. Don't be afraid to do it. Don't be bashful for it. I see a lot of veterans every day that say, John, I was just a cook. I don't deserve this benefit. But I don't buy that. You serve the dotted line just like the guy or the gal beside you. You deserve that same exact benefit. So that's number one to your question.
Right.
Number two is we have a model where I myself or another member of my staff goes to meet every single family face to face regarding this benefit. There is so much you can do on a phone. There's so much you can do in email. But when you have the ability to reach across the table and shake someone's hand, connect pupil to pupil, that speaks milestones. So I get chills when I talk about this. So when I hear the stories that my fellow veteran has went through, a lot of times, KOSTA, the family who's sitting with us at the dining room table or on the sofa will say, John, I have never heard my father speak about the things that he just did in front of you until right now. Of course, tears fall after that. So it's, collectively, the motto is we like to serve everyone inside their own home regarding the paperwork that's needed. And at the end of the day, it's their story. And it's allowing them to bring their story back to fruition.
When you go into someone's home or you work with a provider, like a company that provides in-home care, how long does the process take from the time that you have that initial face-to-face meeting to the time that you submit the paperwork to Veterans Affairs to when the actual care can start being provided? Yeah,
thank you for asking that. It's a common question. And to be brutally honest with you, KOSTA, it really depends on how quickly the family is able to furnish us the documents we need initially. After that process takes place, then we have an amazing director of client relations, whom is a surviving spouse herself. She has to put together this application and make sure all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, to allow myself to go out to meet with the family. So on average, I would like to say between 2 to 3 weeks until we send what's called a start of care out to one of our providers to allow them to begin care with what's called ADLs, which is just a simple acronym for activities of daily living.
And that's not a very long time. I mean, 2 to 3 weeks to get started is pretty incredible. I want to hear your opinion on this, and I think a lot of listeners, people watching this podcast, are going to be interested. When I think of veterans, when I think of soldiers, people that fight in wars, people that literally sacrifice their lives for our country. Why are we just hearing about Veterans First now? Why hasn't this been a staple since, 1925?
That's a great question. I like where you went there, KOSTA. So, first and foremost, before I answer that question, all the listeners out there, if your father's a veteran, if your mother's a veteran, if your mother's a surviving spouse, I'd just like to take a moment to thank you all for your service and your commitment every single day with the challenges that you might be still going through right now with your family. We get it. We hear it every day here at Veterans First. To answer your question now more specifically, is the VA is made up of 3 separate administrations, 3 of them. And a lot of times individuals don't know about that. Number 1 is the Healthcare Administration. And that's where you can go see your own PCP for your bad knee. Right. Number 2 is the funeral and death benefits. And then number 3, what we focus strictly on is the pension and aid and attendance. And in my most humble, respectable opinion, that is not talked about enough, is the pension and the aid and attendance. Now, the VA does a wonderful job with the health care. Fantastic. But we all collectively could do a lot better in advocating for this very little known, underutilized benefit called aid and attendance.
And also to that point, I mean, you keep talking about spousal support. I think a lot of people who are spouses or family members of a veteran, they don't realize that they also have access to this benefit, right?
Most definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up. And not to interrupt you, let me chime right in on this.
No, not at all.
Is surviving spouses, in my humble opinion, are the ones that are forgotten about the most, because the veteran, either he or she passes away, and now the surviving spouse, whom is in her 80s, if not 90s, is left to fend for herself, and she has no idea about this benefit because now Mr. or Mrs. Veteran said, I didn't need this benefit. Give it to the person that served beside me. Now, how is Mrs. Smith going to find out about this benefit, number one? Number two, how is she going to navigate by herself with all these documents? So I'd like to make a point to all the viewers out there is this benefit is entitled, this benefit is used not as an end stage for life. You can have this benefit anywhere after 66 years of age. So, why wait until you're 80 or 90 if your mom needs assistance?
Right. How do you get the word out, though? I mean, I know you've been, crisscrossing the country, talking to providers from, Maine to Nevada, down to Arizona. But I mean, how does Veterans First get the word out? How does the VA get the word out? Are you optimistic that more people are going to start using this benefit like it's supposed to be used?
In the very beginning, I felt how you just presented that. Now, as time has progressed from us doing this, I'm very, very glad to hear that our phones ring constantly. And it's it's not just for this benefit. It's, John, Katie, Eric, Haley, so many individuals in this office. Can you navigate us and help us go here? Or can you tell us where to go here? So it's kind of like, I have small children, Costa, and my daughter loves to play dominoes. What happens when you drop that first domino? They all fall.
The rest of them start to go.
It's the same analogy. So it's all about communication. Facebook, LinkedIn, what you're doing right here, which is fabulous. Sharing all of these. And at the end of the day, have a solid heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think a lot of people, they're so busy in their lives. Like, I see this all the time. I grew up I was born in 89. I was in 7th grade during 9/11. And as terrible as that moment was for our country, I think back to that time and I see how people came together and, more importantly, the emphasis that they put on supporting our troops. I remember before 9/11, I would never see people, say the words, thank you for your service, or standing ovations for soldiers who were, in airplanes, or as it should be. I think everyone that serves should be put on a pedestal. And so as we're having this conversation and, we're kind of I'm asking the same question in sort of a different way. Why did it take so long for Veterans Affairs to start supporting our veterans and, giving opportunities to companies like yourselves? Shouldn't this have been going on all along?
And I like to say, respectfully to the VA, it has been going on. It has.
Okay, good.
The VA has so many phenomenal programs to benefit veterans. So just trying to get a group of veterans plugged in to one of those programs is a challenge inside of itself. Let alone, going back to the domino conversation, you have to get the voice in the right department before you can push and advocate it for that so hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but why though? Why does it have to be so complex? Because this isn't these are people who are going to war, who are sacrificing their lives. I don't know if there's a larger sacrifice than that, right?
You're spot on.
Why?
You're spot on.
Why does it have to be so complex?
So I wish I had an answer for that right away, because if I did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd probably be sitting somewhere else if I'm going to be very open with you
Right.
here on your show.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
But we're here now. And
Yeah.
I can't go backwards. I can only go forward. So, you know,
Good point.
speaking loudly to everyone, screaming this, you know, if you're a veteran, if you're a surviving spouse, if your father is a veteran, your mother's a veteran, your mother's a surviving spouse, your sister's a surviving spouse, be a voice. Go to your local VA. Talk to social workers about the aid and dependence benefit. They will tell you exactly what this benefit is, what it consists of. Veterans First, again, we're the individuals to help them get plugged into this benefit in an expedited manner, because it's very unfortunate. We didn't bring this up yet, Costa. In order for a claim to come to fully developed, the VA, because they're backlogged, again, respectively, that application can sit there for over 12 months.
Oh, wow.
We have cases right now currently in my office that we're still paying for a surviving spouse's home care for over 12 months before they're entitled.
And that means that you're not getting reimbursed by the VA for what you're paying out, right?
That is absolutely correct, sir. That is absolutely
Incredible.
correct. So it's going back to why. It's just get plugged in. Ask the questions.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to hear no. No to me stands for next opportunity. Ask the next person.
Absolutely. So let's get technical about what the care actually looks like. What does functioning everyday support look like for our veterans to maintain their independence and, more importantly, to age in place?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks for asking that. So there's two levels of care out there. There's what's called skilled care, and then there's non-skilled care. So just to highlight that, Veterans First predominantly specializes in non-skilled care. So allow me to give you some examples of that. Help with hygiene, bathing, showering, medication reminders in case mom becomes forgetful and now the family has to go to work and be concerned about mom taking her meds. Meal preparation to ensure that mom and dad eats. Grocery shopping, laundry, making the beds. So some of those, it's the little things to me that make everything to allow a veteran or surviving spouse to remain comfortable and keep their independence at the same time.
So, John, I know that you served for quite some time. I'm sure you've probably seen some things. As you know, not all wounds are physical. How does psychiatric care factor into the equation of what Veterans First is doing?
I'm glad you brought that up. And thank you for acknowledging what you just mentioned as well too. So, when I'll premise it this way, Costa, when a veteran, when we have a married veteran case and his significant other passes away, and now that veteran is left to fend for himself in complete isolation. When we're able to go inside this home and provide 100% companionship and having that veteran speak out what has happened, what he's endured, and even bringing his spouse back into the picture with a conversation. I don't know what's more fulfilling than that. I mean, sometimes when I go into homes and I'll talk for 2.5 hours to Mr. Bob, but it's not about me. It's all about him having the ability to still communicate that. So that's what we find a lot here is the isolation, just to make sure someone is around.
If I could go just off topic and not talk specifically about Veterans First, but psychiatric care in general, what do you think about veteran support groups? Because one of the themes that I hear you bringing up is a lot of conversations that you have with veterans or people that work with Veterans First who are also veterans. When they go into people's homes and talk to them, the stories that you guys share are stories that no one else gets to hear. So I'm assuming that there are things that have occurred that they don't feel comfortable sharing with somebody unless they feel like they've experienced it themselves and been in those situations, that they understand them. So should it be important? Should those support groups be something that every veteran should consider?
It should be, and every VA should have a department that's called the Veteran Advocacy Department. And I might be mispronouncing that title there, so please forgive me. But that's a good resource for a family to go in to find out what groups are available for my father, my uncle. Again, it goes back when we initially said hello to one another. It's about asking the right questions. Because there's a lot of groups out there. And I like how you stated that they don't feel comfortable unless that recipient endured the same or close to the same thing. But yeah, the VA does have a lot of groups daily about that.
Yeah. And do you guys work with organizations like Wounded Warrior,
We do.
DAV? Like, do you guys, is the network, are you one cog in a much larger network, I guess is what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. It's not all about Veterans First. It's a collaborative effort. It is completely a collaborative effort. We're doing a very nice donation drive here where we're going into an area where sometimes individuals don't have the access to go out to buy groceries. So Veterans First is giving gift cards to families to buy groceries just
Amazing.
to talk about how we can help their community as a whole. And everyone likes groceries too with inflation. So,
Of course. Yeah.
right?
Now more than ever, right?
That's the truth.
What, 13% increase in grocery costs? It's crazy.
Of course.
I am curious about how you guys differ. Is Veterans First the only company that provides these types of services? Are you the largest company that provides these types of services? Also, if you're not, how are you different than other just long-term care companies that provide non-medical home health care?
Thank you for saying that. Full transparency, we are not the only company. Like I mentioned before, how I learned this business is I was blessed upon an opportunity many years ago with a large national company. At that time, KOSTA, my position was eliminated and they made it all telephonic to their corporate headquarters.
Wow.
I was crushed. Once a veteran, always a veteran. But again, when you connect with the right people, amazing things happen. So we're not the largest. And in fact of the matter is, I don't think I want to be the largest. But I will say something that is very different is when we have a provider call us that has a veteran or a surviving spouse that cannot afford their private pay rate, and they do not qualify under the criterias for this benefit, which are military, medical, and financial, we have large companies donate us funds quarterly, and we take 100% of those funds and we donate hours to that individual. So I look at it, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the home care agency, it's a win for the caregiver, and it's a win for the family. We can't do this all the time, of course. I wish we could. But I like to say we do it a good amount of time, though. That is something
and if I could,
drastically different.
Absolutely. And if I could just fill in the blanks from my perspective and sort of plug how important what you guys are doing is, I own a home care agency. We do provide VA services, but I'm not a veteran. I'm very passionate about veterans, as you can probably tell. You know, I personally don't think that there is a bigger sacrifice than serving our country and putting your life on the line for freedom and for the citizens of America. But I don't know the VA like you do. I don't know what a veteran goes through like you do. What you guys are doing at Veterans First, providing these services, being a conduit between companies that have the resources to provide care and this big, complex, massive organization called Veterans Affairs. Being that conduit is more important than you may even know. I'm sure you probably are, you reaffirm that belief daily, but
Good to hear that.
most companies in home care, they shy away from the VA because it's hard to work with them. You don't know who to talk to. And like you said, a lot of veterans are on a fixed income. They may not be able to have the resources to pay for care. And so that's not a population that, companies typically target. And so the fact that you guys are saying no and you're changing the narrative, in my opinion, is extremely important. So if you take anything away from this conversation, just know that people that own home care agencies or the people of Tennessee, we're behind you 100%. So
Greatly appreciate that. And thank you for being so candid and full transparency. I can tell you have a heart on your sleeve and you do things for the right reasons. So I appreciate everything you just said as well, Kosta.
Thank you. So let's hammer down and share one piece of advice for our veterans and their families during the aging process. Whenever you're ready.
One piece of advice. I'm going to give you 3 words. You're not alone. There are so many individuals in the home beside you, across the street, in a different zip code that are dealing with the same thing behind closed doors. So if you speak up and you're that person to say, I went to the VA, or I called and spoke with KOSTA, or I called Veterans First, and they guided me to go this way. Well, guess what you just did? You were the first person to step up to be a voice for that other person that may have been more reluctant to do just that. So again, I'll highlight that, KOSTA. You're not alone.
Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
So let's get technical as we wrap up this show. I want to switch and end the show on talking about the long-term care industry and, obviously the 3 tenets. So we always like to end the show with a call to action. What's your best advice for someone entering the long-term care industry as a patient, as a caregiver, or as an industry professional?
Would you like me to give you an opinion on all 3 of those?
Please, that would be great.
Okay. So let me start with a caregiver. Let me go there with a caregiver. First of all, caregivers have hearts of gold. I could not do that every single day. So any caregivers out here, thank you. And I'm sure you would say the same thing, Kosta, with your own company.
Absolutely.
They're the lifeline.
100%.
So if you're a caregiver, you're on the front line. And you may not even believe that. So talk to the other caregivers about this benefit that's called aid in attendance. Start the voice right there. So that's the caregiver side. The second, did you say family? I'm so sorry. I lost train of thought.
Patient or industry professional.
Patient. Okay. Patient. Speak up. Don't be afraid. Speak up. You deserve it. You've been through more than a lot of individuals. You deserve the best. Ask questions. Again, no. What does that stand for? Next opportunity. And industry professional. Any social workers that are listening to this platform as well, thank you for what you do. And just knowing that you have the ability to help a veteran or a surviving spouse with a safe discharge, utilizing this benefit, please talk about it. Because as Kosta kept saying before earlier in the show, why hasn't this been hammered down now? It can be. It can be. Why not start now? I think that's how I would answer all 3 of those, Kosta.
Thank you very much, John.
My pleasure.
This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure's mine. Thank you for having me again.